Ahoy everyone, Tightrope here. Today we're taking a look at the rest of the general gameplay changes, as well as the balance changes to US forces and Wehrmacht that arrived in patch 2.5 of Company of Heroes 3. In another big change in combat mechanics related to cover, if you watch my guide about cover, then you'll know when these direct fire weapons, things like autocannons, tanks, when they landed an accuracy hit on infantry, so they rolled a hit, the explosion would count as being on this side of the cover, so it would explode on this side, and because there's no cover between the explosion and the infantry would end up taking 100% damage. So basically heavy cover wasn't being as effective as perhaps it should have been against these type of weapons, and against the flak feeling this meant that they could often suppress units behind heavy cover because the explosion was happening on this side and then the suppression was still 100%. It wasn't getting reduced by the fact that they're on cover. But yeah, no longer. Now, if the cover is between you and the vehicle, it will provide the damage reduction even on accuracy hits. This only applies to direct fire weapons. So it's autocannons, regular tank shots, AT rifles. Does not apply to other things like artillery or the lobber style projectiles like the Stug D has. So let's see if we can notice a difference. You can see when the flak feeling starts landing accuracy hits, right? The squad starts dying so much faster. Because I think still an accuracy hit is better than the shot landing on this side of the cover and it relying on AoE damage to get through. To further the importance of cover in this patch, Relic have also made changes to world objects that provide cover. Things like these walls, crates, barrels, trucks. Generally what they've done is increase both their health and armor. So these will take more of a beating before they get destroyed. So cover should stay on the field for longer, which I think is good because I did feel like it was kind of disappearing a little bit too fast. In a similar vein, Relic have removed medium crush from these kind of larger light vehicles. So previously they'd be able to crush these heavy cover walls, but no longer the case. So yeah, the cover should stay on the field for longer. Have to wait until medium tanks arrive before they start getting flattened, instead of just from these extra large light tanks. But yeah, I could imagine this making pathfinding like quite a lot worse, especially on the Marder. It's already a little bit slow, a little bit cumbersome. It's the case, mate. I think this one's probably going to be the worst hit. Maybe after the 8-rad, because as we saw, it's now going to be quite bad at shooting at units that are behind cover, and now you can't crush it either. So you're going to have to be doing some extra maneuvering with the 8-rad. This is definitely going to make chasing worse with these vehicles as well, because maybe infantry will be able to like vault over a wall and run away, and your vehicle's not going to be able to directly chase them. You're going to have to go around the long way, might lose a bit of speed, get a bit more distance between you and them, and then you've got worse accuracy, you'll be missing more shots. And a lot of these vehicles will be hit by the moving scatter nerfs as well, so kind of getting a double whammy on light vehicle chasing potential. The Bishop and the Vesper have had some changes to their veterancy bonuses. They now don't get any ability recharge speed until Vet 3. So that's what makes their cooldowns faster on their barrages or their abilities. Yeah, not until Vet 3. I think previously they got maybe like 10% Vet 1, 20% Vet 2, something like that. So this is a pretty big change, pretty big nerf. But just in general in this patch, Relic are trying to make it so these heavier artillery pieces are not firing as often. So we'll come across a few more of them maybe in the factional balance notes. But yeah, pretty big blow, especially to these guys, because it can be quite hard to vet these up now since they had the health reduction. They do tend to die quite easily. And yeah, now you're going to have to get all the way to Vet 3 to get the full juice out of them. All of these weapons here, including the barrage on the 75mm M3, not its regular auto attack, just its barrage, now have a 25% target table penalty to damage when they land on vehicles. Very similar change to what regular mortars received probably a bit over a year ago now. And the reason why this happens is because they've done something a little bit weird with the damage values in this game, where all of these weapons do 120 damage per shot, but when they land on infantry, the maximum amount of damage they can do is about 45, I think it is. So there's a really big disconnect between the amount of damage that they do on paper and then damage that can do to vehicles and then the regular damage they do to infantry. So yeah, because they're supposed to be countering infantry mainly, not countering vehicles, now they do 25% less to vehicles. So still can land some pretty big hits. What's that going to be like? About, what, 90 damage per shot on the Stummel, and I think the Stummel can fire on the move in this patch. The rifle grenade has been nerfed. You can see the old value in red, new value in blue. They basically just shrunk the kill radius on it by a little bit, because I imagine they're worried about machine guns getting one-tapped by this, now that the weapon's not absorbing one portion of the damage, and because the rifle grenade can be launched from so far away, it was pretty easy to land it on machine guns. So fair enough. Paradropped units can now be shot at as they are falling down from the sky. So as you can see here, my paras are falling down and they're getting beamed as they begin to land. I think most people have been asking for this change since the game released, because it's always frustrating to see somebody drop right on top of you and to be powerless to do anything about it. But as a consequence for that, now the satchel charge is available immediately upon landing, because yeah, you can hot drop and drop this on a arty emplacement or whatever, because the enemy could shoot you out of the sky before you land. I imagine that means that paradrop reinforcements as well. One of the problems with this ability is that the squad would become essentially like invulnerable, because one model would always be dropping down from the sky, constantly reinforcing, and you could never actually kill the squad. Still might not be able to do it because they reinforce so quickly, but yeah, that was always really annoying. This made it really strong in 1v1s especially. One thing the developers did mention is that AA doesn't have like target table bonuses against infantry falling from the sky, so they're not going to get like 4 times damage multiplier. Each paradropping units will just be regular for those AA units. You don't have to put AA mode on to shoot at paradropping units. The radius of healing on these 3 medical vehicles has been reduced from 20 down to 15 now. So you can still reinforce 20 range away, as you can see there. But the healing, you have to get a little bit closer for. Like I say, that if you want to take advantage of forward reinforcing healing like this, they want you to be clustered closer to the vehicle, so you can be more easily countered by artillery. Fair enough. For comparison though, the Weasel still has healing out to 25 range, though it does have a reduced rate of healing. And the 250's healing goes out to 20 range still, so some other vehicle options for healing. The Panzerschreck has had its fire aim time reduced ever so slightly by 1/4 of a second. So let's do a quick comparison, it versus the Piat. Which one's going to fire faster? Since they both do 160 damage per shot. Similar penetration quality. Hold on, did they change the projectile on the Piat? It looks like it's like red. Did it always used to have that propellant on the back of it? Don't think I ever noticed it before. But it does seem like the Schreck is still faster than the Piat at shooting. Flamethrowers have been changed so they no longer have bonus damage against mines, which was a change that I never liked in the first place. So there's a mine hidden down here. I'm going to see if I can kill it. 1 burst, no. 2 burst, no. So on the 3rd burst from your handheld anti-tank is when the mine's going to trigger. So the next test I wanted to do is to see if a flame tank chasing a retreating squad is going to trigger these mines as we drive across them. So flame tank, depending on how the burst lines up, depending on exactly the targeting and where exactly you run over the mine, you might be able to get it going. So there's a chance, just because this spits out so much flame damage, that the mine's still going to get triggered, but not guaranteed to anymore like it was in the previous patch. Pretty much all of the big battlegroup off-map artillery strikes and airstrikes have had their cooldown increase from 2 minutes up to 3 minutes. Like I say, they wanted to give a bit more breathing room between these hits, especially in team games where lots of muni caches might be planted. Each faction's engineer unit now gets an additional bonus at Vet 2 of plus 35% to construction speed. So you'll be able to build mines and sandbags a little bit faster at Vet 2. Moving on to the US Forces changes now, and we're starting out with the support centers. Now the final upgrade in every support center is locked behind tank depots, so that's survival training for US forces plus 10 health on your infantry, the aura repairs on the mechanized support center, and the double sortie for the air support center. So, you know, given what you have to tick to get the armory upgrades for DAC, it's probably fair enough. Though I did have a couple of meme builds involving early double sortie on the ASC, so a bit sad to lose them. The ability to tick bars has now been locked behind a support center again, so we're going back to the way it was pre-patch 2.1, which was a bit over a year ago. So yeah, no early bars anymore, which would sometimes be a viable strategy against Wehrmacht in the early game. Personally, I didn't use the build too often, so I don't really have an educated opinion on exactly the strengths and weaknesses or if this is a good change or not. Rifleman's V1 ability Sprint now costs 15 munitions, same as its Broad Honor ability that got changed in the previous patch. And yeah, after the previous patch, it was like a 95% sprint lock-in and everyone was just sprinting around everywhere. It was pretty annoying to play against, if I'm honest. So now maybe players will be more economical with this. Same cost as URA for conscripts in Code 2, by the way. It was also 15 munitions. And as I said earlier, generally I'm in favor of some of the better unit abilities that are free at the moment costing munitions, just to like rebalance the munitions economy in this game. And it's just another lever to pull on for balance, right? If you don't want to touch the direct combat stats of the unit by adding a munitions cost to some of its abilities, it's just one way you can tweak its overall performance. The Bazooka team's steady fire bonus that they get from being stationary now triggers after 5 seconds instead of 7, so coming online a little bit earlier now. It did feel like, you know, you'd sit stationary and then quite often a medium tank would be able to drive away from you before you got the bonus to kick in. So yeah, I think in a lot of situations this will allow you to get one extra shot off on a medium tank before it drives away. Overall, in terms of like anti-tank, we have seen a bit of a shift in the meta over the past few patches because, you know, AT guns got an extra model added to the crew, so they became a lot more appealing to use. A while back, quite a lot of handheld anti-tank got aim time nerfs, and of course the towing changes to heavy AT weapons and setup times and stuff like that made them less appealing. So we've kind of been in a regular AT gun dominant meta, so maybe we're like trying to tip the scales more towards some of the other AT options. The M1919 weapon team now takes 5 seconds less to build. The M1919, a light machine gun that you can get for Old Guard, part of the Free French battle group, or from the Ranger weapon crate drops, has been buffed. A 10% accuracy increase at all ranges. So yeah, new ones on top with the blue, or ones down the bottom on red. Just a, you know, decent little increase there. I think a lot of people realized how bad the M1919 was after it got added through Old Guard, because it was barely out damaging the bar in its specialist position long range while not being able to fire on the move, so it just wasn't very appealing. And I believe the Paratroopers M1919 already has these stats. The Char B1 has been nerfed. It's had a frontal armor reduction and a fuel cost increase. Now costs the exact same amount of fuel and manpower as a Churchill if you're playing as the Brits, but Churchill's still 16 pop and this is only 14. Now this does have a bit more health, a bit more armor, but it's also slower. So they both got their strengths and weaknesses. I was maybe expecting this to go up by 1 on population as well, because, you know, comparing it to like a regular medium tank, it's quite a lot more tank for not a lot more money. Zone Rouge now costs 10 munitions more and has a much longer cooldown. Advanced tourelles have come down in command point cost from 3 to 2. On top of that, the amount of health you gain from an advanced tourelle has gone up from 360 to 480, so 120 more, 1 more shot to kill from most tanks. I'm definitely going to be trying this battle group out again with my tourelle rush alongside of Old Guard and see how it goes. The Whizbang has had some veterancy changes similar to other artillery in this patch. It managed to keep its ability recharge at Vet 1, but its ability recharge at Vet 2 got shifted down to Vet 3 now instead. Now Vet 3 it used to have a really big rate of fire bonus, and that's kind of been like halved almost, split between Vet 2 and Vet 3. SSF Commando's Vet 1 ability Knife Throw should now do double damage when used from cover. So normally it does 100 damage, which is a lot, but still not enough to kill some particularly healthy models, especially like Guastatori, who've got a damage reduction as well. So let's see how it goes. Remember, Knife Throw does target the model that you throw it at, so From ambush it shouldn't matter because it should just kill whatever model. But quite often what I like to do is throw it at a model that's not directly at the front, because obviously your small arms is probably shooting at the model that's directly at the front, so it's already weakened, so you don't want to like waste a bunch of knife throw damage and overkill it massively. So here we go.
The riflemen have spotted us.
It's left with 36 life. Right click and then knife throw this one. No. What am I missing there? Is it bugged? Didn't work?
Enemy engaged.
Okay, it's doing enough to an assault grenadier.
Lively men. Commandos carving a way through.
It's got 110 health, so it's doing some bonus damage for sure.
Throwing knife. Son of a bitch.
Doing at least 125 damage. What was going wrong with the Guastatori? I know that they got damage reduction, but I think it still should have been enough. Paratroopers have had the rate of fire on their carbine buffed slightly, which works out to be about 7% more DPS than last patch. In the heavy weapons battle group, Gallant Stand has been buffed. The received damage debuff that it applies has been reduced from 50% to only 25%. So maybe Relic were worried about it not being as viable now that the team weapon's not absorbing part of the damage. So they're trying to lessen it, but I always thought this ability was pretty good considering it doesn't cost any munitions. And this is how I like to use it as well. Chucking it on the 3-inch before doing a barrage, because as you can see, it starts to pop off. The Pershing's V1 bonus is now 25% weapon traverse. I don't know what it was before. I didn't have it recorded anywhere, unfortunately, but that's what it is now. And it's got a speed buff up to 5.5, which I'm a little bit confused by because it got a speed nerf, I think in November last year. And you can see now it's faster than the Panther again by like a decent margin. So medium tanks just can't get away from the Pershing. And like, I know that like maybe the Pershing hasn't been seeing that much pick rate because kind of similar to a lot of heavy tanks, it arrives quite late. But if you manage to get this out in a 1v1, it was basically an I win button. Like, just about the only way you could ever kill it is if it ran over a mine. So I don't think it needs to be faster than medium tanks by like a massive margin, so they stand no chance against it. Very confusing. Moving on to Wehrmacht now, and Relic are trying to give them a stronger start in certain aspects. So tier 1 now costs 20 manpower less to construct. So ultimately, you know, a few units that you construct out of it will start to arrive 20 manpower earlier. So a little bit of a buff there. But they did also nerf tier 1 officers' quarters upgrade. It now costs 10 more fuel to complete and 15 seconds longer. So in 1v1, the most popular strategy was, you know, maybe double pyos, maybe 2 or 3 grens and a machine gun, something like that, then tier 1 officers' quarters. And that gave you such a massive power spike because it gave all your units the Vet 1 harder to hit bonus and the out of combat healing. And the damage was getting spread around all your models because of the things that we just saw fixed earlier. So, you know, you got a lot of healing out of the Vet 1 medkits, and it led to a pretty big power spike such that you'd earn the 25 fuel back from it usually, and it wouldn't really affect your light vehicle timings by that much because it was just, yeah, it gave you such a big power spike. You'd end up with more map control, more fuel, and it would just about pay for itself. So yeah, Relic are trying to hit that here. And because they're making a lot of these tier 1 units stronger that we're going to look at here shortly, they felt like they could afford to do this. And it did used to cost 35 fuel, like not too long ago. Got buffed a few patches ago. The Pioneer received buffs to its accuracy and rate of fire, so now it's doing about 10% more DPS up close than it was before, which is a decent margin. The Pioneer is going to benefit a lot this patch from the suppression changes as well, like the MG42 is going to suppress all the stuff, and the Pio is going to charge into close quarters, do the damage, and then because it can keep the unit suppressed, maybe the machine gun is free to operate, start looking for other targets while the Pios keep them suppressed. I imagine those two things in synergy are going to make Pioneers quite a lot better this patch, and to account for that, Relic have decided to nerf the build time on Pioneers because they did come out shockingly quickly. And I don't know if you've ever played against Pioneer spam in the past, but it was actually very, very successful and very, very strong. So I think they're also trying to limit that as an option. Grenadiers have received an accuracy buff at mid and long range. So now they're doing about 5% more DPS at max range. They've also come down in cost by 10 manpower. But if you upgrade the assault package and get their sprint ability, it now costs 15 munitions, same as Riflemen. So not massive changes, but a couple nice buffs to the starting units, and I imagine the suppression changes are going to make the machine gun even stronger, so this is really going to carry you. The Jagers Panzerschreck now costs 10 munitions less to upgrade, which is a bit of a surprise. They did give it an aim time buff this patch as well. And the rifle grenade, which you get access to if you've got clearing gear from the new Siegebreaker battle group, that now costs 5 munitions less to use as well. I guess they figured that now that it's got an AoE nerf, the rifle grenade doesn't need to command such a premium. The Flak 30 has had the health of its crew decreased by 5 per model, but it feels like a bit of a strange time to be doing this now that the weapon's not going to be absorbing a portion of the damage, and they literally only buffed it up to the previous value in the patch before this. And one tip about suppressing fire, you can see that it buffs up your burst rate but nerfs your accuracy, so you end up doing pretty similar damage to infantry because of that. But because the target size of light vehicles is so much, you're going to hit them all the time anyway, this can actually give you a boost against vehicles. So you can see that in action here. See how much faster it killed the half-track? So as a top tip for you guys, can be a good option against light vehicles. The 221 has had its fuel cost increased by 5, so it's going to hurt its timing by a bit if you're trying to rush it, and if you're trying to rebuild it if you need the Panzerbuchse again. They've also changed its armor, nerfed the front and side armor, but given it a pretty sizable penetration buff. So it used to have 1 pen at all ranges. Now it's quite a lot higher, so I imagine it's going to rip through these light vehicles pretty quickly. Let's see how we go close quarters against these other ultralights from the Allies. Not as impressive as I was expecting against the Dingo. Dingo does have quite high penetration and decent armor as well. Alright, still a pretty narrow win against the Dingo. I don't think this matchup changed that much. I think that was pretty similar pre-patch as well. So obviously the frontal armor nerf has hurt the matchup against the Dingo, but does chew through the other ultralights pretty quickly. Let's see how it goes against some of the heavier stuff, the quad, post, and the Dingo at long range. Yeah, I mean, not really a match against these two. You're going to need the Panzerbuchse. But it seems like the long-range matchup against the Dingo is slightly better than the close-range one. There has been an armor nerf to the 251 and all of its various upgraded variants. Less armor now. I think they largely did this to make the Flamer half-track a bit more susceptible, and the Stummel, because now the Stummel can fire while on the move. See that there, firing while moving. Not sure what I think about this at the moment. Maybe the Sturm's going to be too strong after this change is my first impression about it. But we'll see how it goes. The 251 does still have more armor than the US half-track, but I'm a little bit surprised it didn't receive a penetration buff like the 221 because it also only has 1 penetration at all ranges. Maybe they could make it a little bit better against things like the Dingo. The Nebelwerfer has come down in cost by 20 manpower, and it's got a rate of fire buff. So we're going to do a bit of a comparison between it and its closest cousin, the land mattress, against a formation of AT guns. Let's see how it goes. So land mattress starts shooting a lot faster. It seems to just maybe deliver its damage a little bit earlier. And maybe like the flame damage has to kind of kick in for the Nebelwerfer to start overtaking, but ultimately can do more damage if the enemy doesn't dodge with the infantry. Sturmpioneers have come down in cost by 10 manpower, and they now cost 1 less to reinforce. I did play a lot of Sturmpioneers on the previous patch, and they did feel viable, but I think the focus fire changes are going to hit them the worst, so I think this is like a slight preemptive nudge to make them a little bit better. Fallschrimpioneers have received 5 extra health per model, and as we saw in the previous video, they've kind of changed their formation a bit. such that the second model is a little bit closer to the front, so maybe this guy's not going to be drawing 100% of the fire from enemy squads as it runs around, because yeah, the squad will start to drop models very, very quickly. Fallschrimpioneers haven't been feeling as good to me. You know, like since the grenade launcher change, I feel like we don't see them that often anymore. So maybe they may still need some more buffs. And I think that's maybe been the case for quite a lot of mainline alternatives. Things like Basilieri, Aussies. You might see one or two of them here or there, but it doesn't really feel like it's the optimal way to play. In fact, you know, Luftwaffe was one of the most popular battle groups in high level 1v1s in the previous patch, one of the most successful in terms of win rate as well, but nobody was ever building Fallschirmpioniers with it. The Flamethrower half-track has received a handful of nerfs in this patch. I'm a little bit surprised they didn't do a hotfix to nerf this earlier, but oh well, here we are. They've reduced its health by 40, so it doesn't really change the shots to kill equation in many situations, but means that if it takes some chip damage, and now it's got less armor, so it will be taking more damage from things like machine guns and small arms, you might be able to two-shot with an AT gun. So yeah, slight health nerf. They've also increased its vet requirements. It was stunning that its vet was so low, the same as the other half-tracks when it does so much damage. They've also removed its bonus damage against units in garrisons. So let's see how it goes now. I'm surprised that they didn't pick this up before release as well. Like, that's still like really, really strong. Nearly knocks out a full health rifleman in like one full burst. So yeah, still looks very, very good against units and garrisons. And they nerfed its build time by 15 seconds, so it's going to be a little bit slower coming online. The Borgward Wanze has had a buff to its angle scatter on the rocket barrage, so that's like the side-to-side scatter, so it should be landing closer to the center of the target more often. So one thing I try to hit with it quite often is the Greyhound. Close to max range, let's see how we go. Yeah, it's still quite bad at long range. We'll bring it in 10 because this does get dramatically better the closer you get. Yeah, and that's very strong, so let's try it again a little bit longer.
My Borgward Wanze are loaded. Firing Panzerschreck. It is done.
Yeah, still not that good, so you're still going to have to get quite close with this. They also mentioned in the bug fixes that you can fire this into the fog of war, which I was unaware was a problem. Let's give this one more shot, but now against a heavy tank that's side on, so a much bigger hitbox at max range. I think this is where the Borgward's really going to shine. So yeah, against a bigger target side on, the side-to-side scatter impacts felt a lot more there. So yeah, against heavy tanks, you're going to notice this. Coastal reserves have come down in cost by 10 manpower, same as Grenadiers in this patch. Also, their snare now gets plus 40 damage at Vet 2, same as most of the other snares in the game. I always thought it was actually intentional to leave this off the snare because this one is stronger than other snares. It applies the blind, which disables vision and weapons from the vehicle for 5 seconds, which is pretty strong.
You can hit a target that big? Pass it here.
You need our stock? They've spotted our stock.
So yeah, can't attack. 5 seconds. But yeah, apparently not. So yeah, now the coastal snare is probably the best in the game. Because if I remember rightly from my old video about this, this one also came out a bit faster than some of the other snares. And compared to the allied snares as well, it doesn't, upon landing, it instantly does the engine damage. It doesn't have a fuse time. So yeah, best snare in the game now, I think. Jericho Trumpet's radius has now been reduced by 5. Sure. The Siege Camp and the Pantherturm can now get Vet 1 if you tick officers' quarters on either the Panzer Grenadier Company or the Luftwaffe Company, so that's really cool. They also nerfed the aura that the Siege Camp provides by a little bit. I didn't really see too much of the Siege Camp in once. Was this too strong? Maybe you team game players can inform me. And the final change for this video, there's been a reordering in the Breakthrough Battle Group. Used to be the command tank would compete against the Tiger at the end of the tree, but now is competing against Blitzkrieg. So you could get the Tiger and Panzer IV command tank combo, and the aura on the command tank, the armor buffing aura, is kind of at its best on the Tiger because it's got so much armor. So the percentage buff on that, just makes the Tiger even stronger. So watch out for that combo. Dak already had access to it. But remember, they did make some tech tree changes to this. So if I want to go for this, I can't call it in until I have Panzer Company or support elements. So I'm going to have to check Luftwaffe Company and then go support elements, and then I can call it in. So it doesn't have a nasty call in time anymore. I think the balance changes to these two factions was a lot less exciting than the general gameplay changes that arrived in this patch, but we've still got 2 factions to go, so keep your eyes peeled for that video next. A huge thank you to all of my Patreon backers who make creating coverage like this possible.